What's good, y'all? It's the day. It is officially the day. It's the NBA draft. It's the NBA draft 2025. And I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit anxious. I'm a little bit nervous. And it's taken me about 5 glasses of water to just cool myself down because the truth is that I'm a nervous wreck going into today. There's a million trade rumors about what might happen. And I'll be honest, I have no idea what's going to happen at 8 o'clock today. But what I do know, and this is what I know for sure, is that we have you covered. The 2025 draft live show and analysis with myself and Ersin. We are going to have you covered. Whatever happens with the Raptors, with the Mavericks. I mean, there's some things that are very predictable tonight. Cooper Flagg will be the first overall pick. Breaking news. That's going to happen. But there's some stuff that could happen around that third pick, sixth pick, ninth pick that, we had rumors today that maybe the Raptors are shopping it for Derek White. We don't know. But today we got you covered with that. We're going to start at 6:45, which knowing me is probably going to be 6:55 as I pop a Xanax and, I don't know, drink 15 more glasses of water. I got my Raptors glass ready. Hang on one second. I'm pull this up. This is kind of cool, actually. This was a gift. Shout outs to Nabi for this little gift. It's my Toronto Raptors water glass. I'm going to drink some water, cool myself down. But I got you covered today with our big board 3.0. And we're going to have you covered tomorrow also for the second round. We're going to do a much deeper dive into the second round prospects that remain on the board after tonight. I'm kidding. I don't have a Xanax prescription, but I know it's for anxiety. I'm just anxious. I don't know. Give me a W if y'all are anxious a little bit as well. There's some high stakes here, right? I've been scouting this draft for about 5.5 months. Started with Rocco Zakarsky, moved down to Carter Bryant, watched a lot of tape on Colin Murray-Boyles, full games. You get really invested in these prospects. You start to pick their game apart. You get really hype about a prospect who has maybe a nice shooting month, and then he ends up going cold. Now I'm talking to you, Noah Senge, right? You see a prospect who maybe flashes a lot of really on-ball creation that's really good in a couple, great games of playmaking, and then you watch the next 2 games and he turns the ball over 7 times. So this is a very tedious, extremely time-consuming process. I would like to be better prepared for this next year by starting earlier than 5 months. I don't think 5 months was enough time, and I found myself over the last week and a half scrambling through Max Shulga tape. And I think the sad part about this is all those withdrawals, right? Which are going to really drastically reduce the number of prospects the Raptors are going to be able to pick at 39. And I was just going through my big board 1.0 and I was like, shoot, I had to chop like 14 guys off my top 60 because of that. And of course, you spend a lot of time watching Yaxel Landenberg, LeBaron Philon, and you say, shoot, was that wasted time that I could have been watching Shulga film? So again, there's some guys that I wasn't expecting to be drafted that are going to be drafted tomorrow night. They're definitely going to be drafted. And previously, maybe they were undrafted guys and maybe guys that I had pegged for G League contracts. Ryan Nembhard was not in my top 70. Now he might be in my top 50 because that's just where this draft is going. Max Sears was not supposed to be drafted. I don't think Sears was going to be drafted in this draft if the guys who were supposed to stay had stayed, but this is the new reality of NIL. So without further rambling and without further ado, let me pull up my draft board and hang on one second. We'll start at the very, very bottom to build up suspense. At 66, we got Caleb Love. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about these guys right now, but this is just to show you where my board is at. 20, I'm going to be honest. I'm surprised I have Tyrese Proctor this low and Amari Williams this low. Kobe Bryant, I totally understand, but Alex Tui, Amari Williams, and Tyrese Proctor make me think a little bit, right? John Poulikitis makes me think a little bit that these guys actually have NBA upside. Lachlan or Albrecht, like that, Mark Sears, these are guys that I could actually see carving out a role in the NBA. Hunter Salas, maybe, right? John Tonje, maybe. These are guys, right? RJ Luis, maybe, right? These are guys that can probably carve out like deep bench roles, maybe be contributors. I don't think a lot of people had Ben Shepherd being a major contributor on a finals team, but he was a major contributor. So there's a lot to kind of sift through with the film on these guys. There's a lot to sift through on their interviews. It's really an exhaustive process. And I tell you, the people who are not watching these interviews, who are not reading up on who these guys are off the court, who are not mapping out the trajectory, and they're just turning on a highlight film or watching a couple of games, you really are missing the context because, again, there are certain guys who really were nowhere as shooters and they've grown a lot as shooters over the last 3 years. There's certain trends that emerge when you watch a prospect like Tyrese Proctor. That's a really great example. This is a guy who came in with a lot of top 15 buzz, and I was pretty confirmed and pretty sure when I saw him in collegiate basketball that this is going to be a first rounder. And sometimes you spend a couple of years too many in the collegiate ranks, and people start to pick apart your game. But he's grown a lot. He's grown tremendously, and so is Sion James. So moving on, this is where we get into the different tier of prospects with Cam Jones, Chaz Lanier, Jameer Watkins, Rocco Zakarski, Kobe Sanders, and this is kind of the range that we'll be talking about a lot. We'll see which one of these guys actually falls right to 39. I mean, there's certainly a chance maybe that someone like Will Riley, Hugo Gonzalez, someone like that could fall. But these are the guys that I'm confirmed, like red zone and above. These guys are all going to get drafted tomorrow or today. And so, in terms of guys that really really stick out here, that maybe I've dropped a little bit too much, and Hanson Young has come up draft boards a lot. Kobe Sanders has moved up my board a little bit. Talk about these guys just a little bit. Again, as I promised, we will go into a much, much, much deeper dive once we see how the board breaks down today. Who is going to be available, right? Cass said, "Are we going to see Scotch Rob tonight? If we pick anyone but Carter Bryant, I promise you there will be like some wine." No, I'm going to stay completely sober. Let's leave Scotch Rob for round 2 tomorrow. Okay, so yeah, I mean, we can start talking about these guys a little bit here. Jameer Watkins, right? 2 years at FSU. Last year, if he'd come out, I think he's a first round pick last year. I was pretty confirmed that he was going to be a first round pick. I was sort of surprised to see him go back. He didn't have the greatest year. Florida State didn't have the greatest year, but this is certainly a guy the Raptors have worked out. They could certainly look at. And, again, we're getting into this range. We're talking about guys that are really going to probably factor in as deep rotation, upper rotation, maybe even fringe starter guys. Janai Broom, one of the most productive players in collegiate basketball this year, good hands, a little bit of a below the rim athlete. Hanson Young really blew scouts away, in the combine scrimmages, and with his post playmaking and some of his mobility as a 7'2" guy. Kobe Sanders, again, like this is a guy who's risen up my draft boards a little bit, just from the perspective of, okay, like what's the real upside here of a 6'7" playmaker with his, shot profile if you can fix the three-point shooting, right? Does a lot of good stuff inside the arc, bit more mid-range heavy. We all know that mid-range shots are not really something that we allow non-stars to make. So this might be one of those situations of he's probably a better collegiate player than a NBA player. So in that case, you probably prefer, a Jameer Watkins over him because at least Jameer is portable and Jameer has solid role player skills, which he could clearly leverage forward. But, if he ends up manning your G League unit, he's also a guy who can get you some buckets at the G League level. He's also a guy who can defend the shit out of, players. He can be harassing on the perimeter as a point of attack defender, and he has length to guard 3 positions. I mean, I think he could potentially guard some 1s, some 2s. I mean, he locked down some really shifty guards and he was a menace. So this is a guy who has some serious dog in him. I've heard some very, very, very good things about him from players who've played with him and played against him. And, they swear and they rave by his work ethic and his commitment. So this is definitely a guy that I would not be surprised that the Raptors are high on. He's a very Raptors-y pick. Rocco Zakarski, again, mixed feelings about Rocco Zakarski. In a draft like this, for you to be the biggest player in the draft, for you to be one of the youngest players in the draft, I mean, I believe he's 18 and going on 19 very soon. For you to be that big, that mobile, not have any notable injury history, to have that type of shot blocking profile, to be able to come in and slot right behind a Jakob Pertl and sort of learn in the G League with Ulrich Shamshi. Like I see the upside with Rocco Zakarski, but you have to wonder, why did he not play in scrimmages? That's a question. Why did he not play for the Bullets? That's a question, right? So these are all questions, and you maybe wonder, like, some of his interviews gave me the feeling that maybe he's a little bit too high on his own supply. Maybe he thinks he's a lot better than he really is. Maybe he's not completely aware of who he is as a prospect because, again, as we talked with Ciro, his agent and his coaches were talking about him as potentially a top 10 pick very, very not too long ago. And not a lot has changed since then. And this is a very Hugo Gonzalez situation where he just didn't play a lot this year and you don't have a lot of tape to go on. So you have to go back. You have to go back levels and you have to see more of his youth tape and then ask yourself, well, how much of that has been worked on? And maybe these are the types of players that you really need to do the investigative stuff with the teams that they played for and just ask, why were they not playing? What were they working on when they weren't playing? Because again, it's just like the same thing with Carter Bryant, Hugo Gonzalez, Rocco Zakarski. There's not a lot of reps. This is not like, a situation with Janai Broom or Sion James or even Ben Seraph where they had prominent roles. The case with Drake Powell is why and what and how much of the high school tape translates. And again, it's not uncommon. Kyrie Irving didn't play a ton of collegiate basketball. Shaden Sharp didn't play a minute of collegiate basketball. Shoot. James Wiseman didn't play, very much collegiate basketball. And it's like you just got to go on your gut and you got to go on the intel and you got to go on what coaches are saying about these guys. But these are all guys that I think could potentially be rotation guys in the NBA for sure. And, if I had to just pick my favorite in that red group, it's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, I'll be honest, if I was higher in any of these guys, they probably wouldn't be in my red group. But moving up to yellow, hang on one second. I'll drink some water. Okay. Moving up to the yellow group. We got Will Riley from Illinois, Drake Powell, Walter Clayton, Ryan Cockbrenner, Hugo Gonzalez, Adu Thiero, Nolan Traore, Danny Wolf, Noah Penda, and Yohan Berenger. So I wouldn't be surprised if I see Yohan Berenger go 14th. He could be a lottery pick. The Spurs could be extremely high on him. He's very raw. Noah Penda strikes me as a guy that a lot of people are going to look at as he should have gone higher. He feels like a very toolsy prospect that has a lot of two-way upside. And, if he ends up in the right situation, that could be really great. Danny Wolf has been linked to the Toronto Raptors at 9, which would shock me so much that I might need to bust out some wine. So I don't really see it personally, but he's a better defender than people think he is. Just on reputation alone, I think the analytics and the eye test tell you he's a better defender. He's committed. He's a decent shooter. Definitely. I don't know how much of the primacy that he enjoyed last year is necessarily going to translate at the NBA level, but he's definitely a high feel, high passing, high vision type of player. Also very turnover player, turnover prone player. People say he is a guard, he's a guard in a big's body. Miss me with that. His dribble is high and I don't think it's going to work at the NBA level. He's going to cough up the ball a lot, but he does have very unique movement patterns for a 7-footer. And I mean, honestly, the most optimistic people would look at him like maybe a Franz Wagner. So the comparisons to him are often wing comparisons. And when you consider his size, it's the same situation with Diego Demon. Like plus size playmakers are something to behold, right? In the case of Drake Powell, really, this just comes down to role player potential, fit, shooting upside, and most realistically, multi-positional defender, right? Walter Clayton, I really think Walter is probably going to go 20th to the Miami Heat. Heard him say, in a draft interview yesterday, he was talking and, he was asked, like, if you could have dinner with any person, past, living, present, whatever, who would you pick? And he picked Eric Spoelstra as one. And I think he could pick Kobe Bryant as the other one and somebody else. So, I mean, maybe he has a promise from the Miami Heat. He's a very Miami Heat type of player. If you'll remember, Ciro actually picked him in our community mock draft to the Miami Heat. So I'm thinking there's actually some smoke and fire there. Hugo Gonzalez, I'm really just trying to fight against my preconceived notions of who Hugo is supposed to be versus who he is right now. I'm projecting a lot of gaps because I think he averaged like 3 points per game this year. He did not play a lot. He just does not play a lot. And that's expected. He plays behind some incredible players against grown men in the most competitive basketball outside of the NBA. And his inability to do, like, he's feisty. He's got a high motor. He's got good creativity with the basketball, but a shaky shooter. And so you try to project that and you say, well, okay, U16, U17, at the youth levels, U18, we were looking at a guy who had a lot of on-ball reps, and maybe that didn't exacerbate some of the shooting concerns and spacing concerns. But now when you're asked to play off of better players, what are you doing for the better players? Is the same situation that we brought up with RJ Barrett. If you want to look at poor man's RJ Barrett in this draft, that's guys like Hugo Gonzalez and Ben Seraph, guys who have some on-ball chops. Ben might be actually he is a better passer, and 100% he's a better passer than RJ Barrett was at the same age. But the question becomes, do you score well without the basketball? Do you have some ability to space the floor for your prime guys? What are you doing for Brandon Ingram when you're out there? And that's where you look at a guy like Drake Powell, you look at a guy like Ryan Kalkbrenner, a guy who can sort of space the floor, provide some three-point shooting, albeit I'm not sure how much of that three-point shooting is going to translate because he didn't really shoot it at the highest level. And you look at a guy like that and you're like, okay, I could certainly see how the argument for one is greater than the argument for the other, even if I could see this guy being better. In this group, really the two guys that stick out to me as like they could really, really, really pop are Adu Thiero and Nolan Traore. So obviously, Nolan Traore, really just a weak defender. I'll start with the cons on Nolan. A weak defender, not the greatest spatial awareness off the ball, kind of gets lost, not very pesky. I feel like if you're a guard, you got to defend the basketball. He doesn't do the greatest job, but he is a blitzing fast athlete, has a great handle, good game manager, good feel, good pace, really operates in the pick and roll. You see how Darko likes to play. If the Raptors do trade down and they end up with Nolan Traore, I'll be doing backflips because this is the type of guy that Darko can make into a serviceable backup guard who can play a little bit off the ball as well. I think at some point, if the shooting ever comes around, because he has a little bit of plus size in that situation, he's a very good athlete. Uh, but could be a very special playmaker if the shooting ever comes around. And Adu Thiero, like again, I made a video earlier this off season about how the Raptors might want to investigate the Jonathan Kuminga situation, and Adu Thiero has a lot of Jonathan Kuminga in his game, but because he's a little bit older, maybe he's not getting lottery buzz. But I mean, this is a guy who a lot of people thought is a second round pick, and I think when people really had a chance to sit down and watch his tape, they were like, "Shit, like a guy who attacks the rim this way." A guy who has grown this much over the last couple of years, a guy who has these types of tendencies in transition and defensive dog in him. Like this might be a guy that you actually want to bet on in the first round. So I could certainly see him going a little bit higher than people expect him to go. And yeah, Joan Beranger, it's really difficult to project given the level of competition that he played and given like where he is right now as a basketball player. It's a little bit like Ulrich Shamshi last year, where it's like, okay, raw as hell, athletic tools, I get it. If you really buy his aptitude for learning and you buy his footwork, there is a lot to like in that tape. Here we go. And this is the top of the board. And this is the top 21. And this is broken down into one, two, three, four, five tiers. And, continuing with the yellow is Asanul at 21, Georgia product. The Raptors have been linked to Asanul in a trade down scenario. Some people have actually talked about him as high as 9. I think looked at the Ringer mock. No, I think it was the Yahoo mock draft with Kevin O'Connor, and he had Asanul at 9. Oh, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But if the Raptors do pick him at 9, I'll try to be patient with it because there's clearly something that I very much missed in his tape. And you must believe in some massive shooting upside and projection with him. Rasheer Fleming, a guy who had also generated a lot of buzz at the top of the draft earlier in the draft cycle. I think a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, I think there were a lot of people here who were projecting him to go as high as 9, 8, 10, 11, 12 with a floor of 15. That's cooled off a little bit. I think people have had a chance to sort of evaluate the tape and maybe second guess how good a shooter you really think he is. It's very easy to just say, okay, well, this guy shot 40% from 3, so he's a really great shooter. I don't really know how great a shooter he's going to be at the NBA level, but there's some very, very good things with Rasheer in that he's young for his class, right? Which is like, again, you say freshman. Derek Queen's a freshman. Cooper Flagg's a freshman. Yeah, but they're separated by almost 2 years, right? So it does matter. Like it matters because you've been alive for 21 years. Your brain is formed that for 21 years. You've had 21 years to add muscle mass, and there's a big gap between an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old. Cooper Flagg at 18 was the best player in collegiate basketball. In my humble opinion, he was the best player in collegiate basketball. What if he went back next year? He would be the best player again. And if he went back one more year, he might be the greatest player in collegiate basketball history if he kept going up the way I expect him to go up. So again, we do have to take these gaps in age very seriously. And Rasheer is young for his class. So he's 21 years old. He's shown a lot of upside in terms of development over the last couple of years. I do think the on-ball creation will be something that would be very nice to have. But earlier in the class, we were hearing a lot of comparisons to Kawhi. I don't see it at all, but I do see a little bit of Jaden McDaniels in him. I do see, an ability to maybe bulk up and play the five as a small ball. I don't think his release is that big a problem if he is the five, but if you're expecting him to be a wing, I don't think so. He has an elite wingspan, really good in transition. Ball handling is a little bit not great. And the reason that I don't really like him for the Raptors is I don't really like his awareness of the court. I don't like his playmaking feel. And overall, his vision for the court and court processing is not great. He's a pretty robotic player. His movement patterns do not, they don't evoke the same sense of wonder and jubilance as Carter Bryant and Noah Senge, who are much more fluid in their movement patterns. So he's a little bit more hitchy and rigid. But if this works out, it's probably going to be a huge, huge steal and maybe even a second team all defense type of guy. Jace Richardson measured a lot lower than I thought. I have a really difficult time understanding whether I'm too low or too high on Jace Richardson, depending on which day you ask me. There's some days where I think he might return top 10 value. There's other days where I think he should be a second rounder because I think it's all coming down to how well or how optimized do you think he was last year. His analytics scream that he is going to be a starter at the NBA level, but his projection and play type and archetype and skill set and when you really start to dissect his game and his handle and his passing and his shooting, you really start to see a guy who maybe just does not have the right archetype. I'll tell you one thing though, if he was 6'5", he's probably a top 5 pick. If he's 6'5", he's a better player than VJ Edgecombe. If he's 6'7", he might go ahead of Dylan Harper. That's the gap. Okay. Like Nolan Bambury saying, Penn, if you talked up Carter for like months and then the Raptors don't pick him, I think I might crash out, not gonna lie. I'm fully expecting it. I'm totally fine with it. It's what it is. I think I went through my existential crisis over the last couple of days. I'm still gonna support Carter wherever he goes. Talk about Carter when we get to him. Moving on to Neek Clifford, almost 24 years old, off-ball wing with some on-ball stuff. He's really developed his game a lot in that regard. I don't think his handle burst or anything is going to project him to be the type of guy who's going to be able to get his shot off the dribble. I've heard a lot of Jalen Williams, J-Dub comparisons. I don't think he's that level of athlete. I don't think he's that level of twitch. I don't think he's that level of finisher. I don't think he's that level of anything. But I do think that this is going to be a guy who could very easily be the fifth starter on a championship team or the fourth starter on a championship team. His playmaking is super underrated. I really liked his tape as a, jumbo playmaker, off ball wing, combo, hybrid, whatever you need him. And I think the defense is actually pretty damn good. Like the defense is very competent and I like him. Kasparis Yalkachonis, I might be one of the lower people on Kasparis. I certainly see him falling a little bit in the draft, but I could also see him going sixth. Like it's a wide range from 6 till 18 for Kasparis, and I get it. Plus size playmakers of European descent should be my jam. I liked Goran Dragic a lot. I actually liked Roko Laniukic a lot. Kasparis has a lot in common with those player types that I've generally always liked. I just don't like his below the rim finishing. Don't I like his playmaking. I understand why a coach like Darko Rajakovic or even Jordi Fernandez would be very enamored with the idea of Kasparis. And earlier in the season, before he cooled off, he was getting some serious top 5, top 6 buzz. I think my issue with Kasparis is I watched him before he got to Illinois, and I didn't like him as a prospect then. And I think a lot of that has sort of tainted my view of him. So I'm going to work on that over the next 2 hours and see if I can just get a little bit warmer on him. Maxime Renault, again, another guy who was a little bit late to picking up basketball, kind of a walk-on, and has just really morphed into a very, very competent passer and shooter. And at 7'1", that is a very valuable thing to have. A stretch big who can competently, play basketball and read the floor well, decent athlete, functionally, good. I don't think he's going to go 16th, but I wouldn't be surprised if he returns top 16 value. Yegor Demon, best passer in this draft. I think he is in that conversation. I think he might lead the conversation. He's a great passer. There's not a single pass that he can't throw. It's a little bit like Nolan Traore, except Nolan Traore is like 6'4". Yegor Demon's a legit 6'8" without shoes. So this is a huge dude. He's been shooting it well in his pre-draft. He's been really impressive. The analytics don't scream star to me at all with him. And the Josh Giddey stuff, twitchier Josh Giddey. I mean, a twitchier Josh Giddey, in reality, given what we saw Josh Giddey do this year, probably should go top 10 in this draft every single time. So why doesn't he? He's not a great defender, but because he's 6'9" and he has a decent ish wingspan, I think he's a 6'10" or 6'11" wingspan, he will have the size to be hidden well. It's not going to be a situation like Colin Sexton, Darius Garland, even Anthony Simons, where he's so slight a build that he cannot possibly be hidden. No, he can play a role on defense for sure. I think it will matter to me a lot whether he shoots it or not. He has made some good progression towards his shooting form, but again, like with more space, a playmaker of this size could really, really return like top 6, top 7 value. There's a chance that he morphs into more of an off ball wing because it will be difficult, I think, in the NBA, especially when going more positionless now, where typically your best player, best scorer, best decision maker is almost always handling the ball. Like if you're playing off of a Jokic and you're the point guard, guess what? You're not the point guard anymore. He's the point guard. You're playing off Luka and LeBron. You're the point guard. You're not the point guard anymore. You're playing off of Scotty and Brandon Ingram. You're not the point guard anymore. You got to space the floor. You got to do movement shooting shit, and you got to pick up 94 feet. And I don't really think he has that. So, if he doesn't become a star, he has a lot of bust potential. But, he also has some actual superstar potential because playmaking at that size is not to be taken for granted. There aren't a lot of players at 6'9" who can move the way he does and pass the way he does. But his scoring will be important. Doesn't finish super well. And again, we don't know. There's something about 6'8", 6'9" guys. When the court expands, their game expands, right? But with the way the game is going, I don't necessarily love how he handles physicality this year. So that's one thing. Cedric Howard at 14, this starts the lottery. And, Cedric is a very interesting player because he only played 6 games last year, got injured, wasn't like someone that blew me away, but his shooting form is butter smooth. He has shot it well for years now, whether we're talking Eastern Washington or last year. And, even though he played a very small sample size, it did not look like the increase in competition really bothered him all that much. Another guy who doesn't process the court necessarily well, doesn't necessarily always play make well for others, has a crazy wingspan of 7'2", not the greatest defender. Like if I'm comparing him to guys like Carter Bryant, Colin Murray Boyles, guys who I really think VJ Edgecombe, he falls short defensively. So his path to the NBA, if even 2% of this Kawhi Leonard upside in comparison is going to prove to be true, he's going to have to guard at a very, very high level. And you know what? For a guy who took on this much of a load offensively, who knows? Maybe he was conserving himself defensively and he can turn himself into a defensive specialist. He certainly has the skill and the tools to do that. Speaks very confidently of himself, seems to be on a mission to prove everybody wrong about him. And, seems like an OKC type of guy, to be honest. At 15, it's going to be between him, Rasheer Fleming, and Thomas Sorber, depending on who drops. Number 13, Derek Queen. I've very much considered moving him down further. I've also considered many times moving up much higher. This is a player who has an unquantifiable feel for the game and a rhythm for the game that is hard to teach. When you watch him play, he simply just knows how to play basketball. He is a player who is, I would consider, a natural. I would not be surprised if you actually did an IQ test with him that he tested out genius. In fact, he's one of 2 players in this draft that I wouldn't be surprised if they were geniuses, and that's him and Maxime Renault. He is an exceptionally bright basketball player. He is, however, a below the rim finisher who sometimes just uses bumps and contact to finish over defenders that are going to be much bigger at the next level. He is a player that showed him to the draft combine, 18% body fat, and when asked about it, said, yeah, I'm in about 7 out of 10 condition. I don't know why handing players more money is leading me to believe that they're going to be in better shape and take their career more seriously. Now, Mars, actually, on the panel today, brought up Nas Reed. Nas Reed is a great example of Derek Queen-ish. Now, Queen's a more talented player at the same stage. Naz Reid was, however, projected to go lottery, had a really, really terrible workout process, and ended up going undrafted. And the Raptors passed on him as well. There were so many red flags. There's a lot of red flags with Derek Queen in terms of that stuff, in terms of keeping the shape. His motor is very bad defensively. What role does he play defensively? He's not a five at all defensively, and you are who you guard, according to Larry Brown. He's not quite a four because he gets hunted in space. He has really good hands, like he's really good at swiping down, and he does a better job than most centers at just poking the ball away. There's a lot of Jokic in his game defensively, and I don't mean that as necessarily a compliment because he's smaller than Jokic and he's not nearly as physically imposing as Jokic at this stage. And I don't expect him to necessarily ever be. And he's not in as good shape as Jokic, which is the craziest thing to say of all, right? So he has a lot of high field playmaking, and it doesn't necessarily reflect in the turnovers or assists. But if you actually watch enough Maryland tape, you'll see that this dude throws passes that centers simply should not be able to throw. He was the best player on his high school team, which included a ton of great players other than Cooper Flagg. Of course, Cooper Flagg was the best player on the team. But old for the class. He's 21 years old. And I wonder how much that is going to scale down. Is he going to just flame out? Because again, this is not a player. And I'll tell you the biggest red flag with him, I hate his jumper. I absolutely hate it. I don't care if it goes in occasionally. I really don't. I absolutely despise his jumper. He shoots it flat. It's an ugly ass jump shot. It needs to be restructured. And I'm sort of surprised that he didn't restructure it. Look, in a lot of ways, he reminds me of Scotty Barnes. And Scotty Barnes is one of my favorite prospects of all time. I mean, honestly, if we're talking favorite prospects of all time, we're talking Kevin Durant. We're talking Scotty Barnes, Carter Bryant. Like, I mean, I certainly have a type, right? I like wings. I like guys who are big, who can, play multi-positional, who have playmaking and passing feel. I find it somewhat interesting that he reminds me so much of one of my favorite players, and yet it is in the ways that he differentiates or deviates from one of my favorite players that really pisses me off. Yeah, of course, he is a Montverde kid, but the way that Scotty restructured his jump shot a lot coming into the draft process, came into the draft process with like 5.2% body fat, like that showed me that Scotty was taking it seriously. I don't want to have to teach you to care about basketball. And the funny thing is, I don't have any doubt that he loves the game of basketball. I just don't know if he's mature enough or has the right people around him to tell him what he needs to do to get to the next level. And that's why number 12, Thomas Sorber, is above him. Has a lot of the same gifts that Derek Queen has, except he's not a defensive liability. And I do trust his jumper scaling up a little bit more, not necessarily projecting a stretch five here, but he is a guy who has shown some considerable touch. Watched a lot of Thomas Sorber in high school before he got to Georgetown, was a little bit bouncier, came into the draft cycle, not necessarily overweight or out of shape or whatever, but very bulky. And I wonder how much of that has to do with the foot injury that he had last year. A lot of vagueness around what that foot injury was. But if the Raptors checked out his medicals, this is not a player that necessarily would be the worst idea at number 9. I think it's a reach, though. I do, because the board breaks at 11. And this is where we have Ace Bailey, Arius Bailey. Now, I have recently talked up and down about Ace Bailey. I've said good things and I've said bad things about Ace Bailey. The good things that I've said about him is that he is a tough shot maker. He lives in the gym. He has a lot of confidence. He has some ability to guard multiple positions and has some ability as a weak side shot blocker. And that's very valuable as a wing, especially as a perimeter player who can recover to the paint. That is good. That is good for a team system in, defense. He has the ability to space the floor. He is a good shooter. There's a lot to like here, right? He's exceptionally young. He's 18 years old. Really came on the scene in his final year in high school. And, there's the negatives too. Not always dialed in. Takes a lot of tough shots. Doesn't get a ton of separation on his dribble. Doesn't process the court necessarily very well. How much of this is going to be exacerbated by the fact that he's now going to be going up against really much more physical people? He has a game that seems to be very inefficient, and he doesn't seem to care very much. When asked about it, he said, I practice those shots. You don't practice those shots. You need a certain amount of confidence to succeed at the NBA level. You need to believe in yourself. But I prefer the Carter Bryant brand of confidence as opposed to the Ace Bailey brand of confidence, which is delusional confidence. He is not good enough to be making the demands that he's making right now. And yet, at the same time, there's a part of me that thinks I wish more prospects did what he's doing right now, which is to say, I wish more prospects tried to avoid the pitfalls of ending up in the wrong situation. I firmly believe that any negative thing that I have said about Ace Bailey is for his benefit. And I'm not trying to talk like I'm some authority and he should care what I have to say. I'm not trying to talk to the guy. I'm not trying to coach the guy. I really don't know enough to coach him. What I am saying is the more his draft stock falls, the better the situation he's going to end up in. Because I'll tell you right now, if he goes top three, he will be a bust. I'm almost certain of it. He does not fit those top three teams. He's obviously not going 1, 2. So I'm obviously talking about Philly at 3. I don't think he's a good fit in Charlotte, but anything after Charlotte, I don't think he's the greatest fit in Utah either. I think he needs structure. I would love to see him in Washington. In fact, I'm praying for the Ace Bailey heads out there, for Ace Bailey FC, that he ends up in Washington or Brooklyn. He needs that type of structure. Washington can provide him with a lot of structure. Washington has CJ McCollum now. Washington has Marcus Smart. They have veterans who actually know how to play this game at a high level, like Chris Middleton, who can hopefully coach this guy up and actually give him a dose of humility about how to carry himself as an NBA athlete so he doesn't burn a lot of bridges before it's too late. This is the right thing. And you know what? Maybe he's mature in some elements, but not mature in others. That happens to a lot of people. I myself was one of those people, was very mature in one regard, and probably a 5-year-old up until the age of 30 in another regard. I get it. But yes, the game and the talent is undeniable. The bust potential is also undeniable. Moving on to Jeremiah Fears, a player that I have oscillated between 5 and 10. And I'm moving towards 10, even though I really like his tape. Every time I've watched him, I've seen all-star potential in him. I think the problem is fit. Now, again, I remind you, I was pretty reasonably high on Kobe Buffkin as well. There is something about a guard who attacks the paint that I like, and it's good. Rim pressure is good. A lot of these guards actually down my board are there because they don't attack the rim. They don't apply pressure. Jeremiah Fears is relentless. And ironically, given his name, he is absolutely fearless. He is a player who believes in himself. In an interview today, believe with Chris Haynes, or no, not with Chris Haynes, somebody, he was saying that he thinks he's a top 3 player in this draft. He thinks he's the best player in this draft. And, you know, that level of confidence, Mike Miller being his agent, Mike Miller being the guy that, told everybody in Denver, Jokic is going to be the star. I would not be surprised at all if he ends up being a top 3 player in this draft. But the bust potential is real here. It's a real bust potential. There is actual bust potential because as much as I believe in a shooting upside, despite shooting 28% from 3 last year, I do believe that as this guy gets more physical, he's going to be a problem. I think the problem is I don't necessarily think he's a point guard. It's hard to sort of see him as like a lead decision maker. His decision making does not necessarily evoke the same level of confidence as even a Ben Seraph at this stage. He's going to have to work on that a lot to succeed at this level. He's not the most explosive leaper. So this is not John Morant, Steve Francis type of explosion, but he is a quick first step, might be the fastest first step in the draft. And the one thing I'll say about him that maybe the Raptors could really use if they do draft him at number 9, he has the best handle in the draft. His handle is on a string. It's very Kyrie Irving-esque. It's obviously he's put a lot of work into it. He'll walk in day one and be a top 30 ball handler in the NBA. And there is a world in which this just really doesn't work. There really is. The jump shooting doesn't come around, the catch and shoot stuff. He just struggles with a, off ball roll. He sulks, he pouts, and it doesn't work. But there is a world in which this actually nets you an actual all-star. And that is crazy to say at this level. Moving on to number 9, Noah Asenge from Ratio Farm. Now, Noah has a lot of pros and a lot of cons. I'll take you through the cons and I'll move towards the pros to leave this on a high note, given that the Raptors have been exceedingly more and more linked with Noah, and there's a high probability that the Raptors will, in fact, pick him tonight. I'm not going to crash out if the Raptors pick him because he's number 9 on my board and the Raptors are picking 9th. Obviously, you'll leave number 3 on my board to pick him, which would be annoying, but it's fine. I get it. I understand. This is a player type that is very interesting for a multitude of reasons, but then let's talk about the drawbacks. Does not create well off the dribble for himself. There's not 2 dribble moves that right now he can put together in successive possessions, which he can put to memory, that he can actually do. He is inconsistent as hell as a shooter. I mean, we're talking like elements of 50, 60% free throw shooting, periods of being not able to throw the ball in the ocean, bad misses, man. And then, there's a 10-game stretch where he'll shoot 35, 40% and everything's feeling good and everything's feeling right. Free throw percentages have been somewhat mixed over the last 2 years, but had upswing where I think he shot at 70% this year. So there's some shooting concerns there, let's just say, with him, and you're gonna have to work on it. But Darko has restructured the jump shooting of Ochai Abaji, and I'm just saying he doesn't project as a good shooter. There is no reason to believe he's going to be a good shooter. If he turns into a good shooter, props. He doesn't have the longest arms, 7'1", but he has a crazy standing reach because of high shoulders. He has a high center of gravity. He is a crazy. Okay, I'm still talking negatives. Let me just, before I get to the positives, talk about negatives. He is inconsistent, I would say, as a defender. I mean, he has crazy tools, but he gets lost sometimes. Just ball watching doesn't always, bring the most consistent effort on that end. I think the passing is average-ish for a 6'11" player, but maybe for a guard wing, especially if he's going to play three, I would say he's just very average to below average as a playmaker. He does a lot of connective passing, a lot of hockey assists, and a lot of that stuff, but I don't necessarily see any on-ball stuff. So negatives, rounded shoulders, very slight of frame, probably a couple years away from actually, you know, contributing at the NBA level in a meaningful role. And when I say meaningful, I mean you're playing 25 to 30 minutes a night. I don't mean you're coming off the bench for 5 minutes to wreak havoc and, bother some shooters. Let's talk about the pros. There's a lot of pros with Noah Senke. And I can fully understand why the Raptors worked him out yesterday or 2 days ago and why the Raptors are so high on him. Number one, he has the ability to get skinny around screens. He can really navigate pick and rolls very well. He can get very low in his stance. He can harass ball handlers. As a 6'10" wing, you can actually go out and keep pace with ball handlers, and you can trust your length. You have very good defensive technique. He has some good defensive playmaking upside. He is relentless. His motor is insane. He just consistently attacks the rim. The finishing has gotten a lot better. The touch has gotten a lot better. It wasn't great 2 years ago. I watched him 2 years ago, and just out of curiosity, watched him 2 years ago. The touch has come night and day. The shooting has progressed night and day. So there is some track record of progression. He is a younger brother, and his older brother and he have a really good relationship. So maybe that's always a good thing. Mo Pete was also a younger brother. There's some guys, in the NBA that are younger brothers, and it almost always works out. But hey, for every one of those situations, you have a Cody Williams. We'll see. The jury's still out on him. He's a really good transition player, and his movement patterns scream, absolute NBA player. Every time you watch him play, he's absolutely hitchless. He is relentless, and he is fast. He is a bullet up and down the court. He catches the ball well. He cuts exceedingly well for a player of his experience level. He is a true 18 years old. I think he's the second youngest player in the draft, right behind Cooper Flagg. So, there's a lot to like. It's going to be a work in progress, but if it works out, you probably have, a 12-year starter. Reminds me a little bit of Sean Marion, Pascal Siakam, a little bit of Andre Karolinko, a little bit of Sean Marion. Like those are the guys. Those are the guys. We're not thinking Giannis Antetokounmpo because he's not nearly the power athlete that Giannis was. I don't necessarily think he'll ever be the playmaker that Giannis was, or Russell Westbrook or something like that, like a big stretched out, Gumby stretched out Russell Westbrook. But he does enjoy contact, and that is a very good thing for a player playing up against grown men in the fifth hardest league in Europe, that he is consistently attacking, and fearless. And I like that. I like players who respond well to contact. He's a player that responds well to contact. Speaking of a player that responds well to contact, Colin Murray Boyles, number 8, another player that the Raptors are very likely to pass up on for Noah Senge. I love Colin. I really do. You think I'll be upset if the Raptors pick CMB, and I won't be. Shooting is a concern for sure, but he shot it a little bit more last year. Very productive, insanely productive player for a team that really had no business being competitive given the roster that was around him. I would have picked him as high as 3 to 4 last year. He falls to 8 this year, kind of giving you an idea of where last year's draft stacks compared to this one. Great high playmaking feel, great understanding of how to cut, great understanding of how to defend, great defensive technique, incredible defensive anticipation, just great at reading plays, blowing shit up, very high motor, takes contact exceptionally well, very crafty around the basket, just an exceptional touch and just a layup package. And he's not a vertical explosive type of guy. He again has a lot in common with Scotty Barnes, except unlike Scotty Barnes, he's even a worse shooter than Scotty from range. But unlike Scotty, his handle and creation ability in the mid post and his offensive game and bag and refinement is just a lot better, in my opinion. Defensively, he's a smaller, version of Scotty in terms of the defensive upside. He is about 6'6", 6'7", and he has about a 7-foot wingspan. Not quite the 6'8", 6'9" that Scotty was with a 7'3", 7'4" wingspan, but it is close. In a lot of ways, he'll remind you of Jonathan Mobo, but unlike Jonathan Mobo, and just like Jonathan Mobo, he's a great rebounder. He's very physical, good playmaker for his size. Unlike Jonathan Mobo, his passing and I would say Mobo is a good passer, but his offensive game and touch and feel around the basket, he's not missing those bunnies that Mobo is missing. You already have Mobo, you already have Barnes. Do you need Colin Murray Boyles? Well, I say when you have the opportunity to draft a guy like this, especially if he's the best player actually available and Carter actually goes above, I wouldn't be mad at it. You work on the jumper, you work on that, you play him as a small ball four for now. He has incredible post hub ability. Like he makes great decisions. He's a good screener as well. Again, you'll be using him in a very different context than South Carolina did this past year. You're not going to be relying on him for 24, 25% usage. But in an off ball role where his screening and feel for the game, I think it will translate very well. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if he is first team all rookie this year. Kaman Malawach at number 7. Hang on one second. Kaman Malawach. A lot of people have made some mention of Kaman's abilities to be this lockdown defender. Obviously, teams struggle to score around him, but it's really difficult when a player is flanked by this many great defenders to really isolate their impact, right? I've always said this defense is a team thing that holds true in the NBA, that also holds true in collegiate basketball. When you consider Kaman Malawach, right? Sion James is a great defender. Tyrese Proctor is a great defender. Cooper Flagg is a phenomenal defender. Con Knipple is a good defender. Being in that lineup and their bench depth was actually pretty decent defensively too. I mean, really, his job was not that complicated offensively or defensively. If you're the Raptors and you're valued in Kaman Malawach as the 9th overall pick, you need to ask yourself how much of what he showed at NBA Africa Academy, how much of what he showed this past summer for South Sudan is going to translate. Can he shoot? I believe he can. I firmly believe that Kaman Malawach can shoot, that he will shoot well. Can he block shots at a higher rate than we saw him block? Can he rebound better? I think he can. This is a guy who was Chet Holmgren thin like 4 years ago, 3 years ago. This is a guy who picked up basketball 4 years ago. There's a lot of late bloomer potential. You can't teach 7'2". You can't teach 7'7" wingspan. You can't teach his level of commitment to learning. It seems like he is a really quick study, and his teammates swear by him, love him. I don't know if I see Joel Embiid. That I do not know. That would be a crazy, crazy thing. I don't see Rudy Gobert. I see something between those players, though. I see a starting center for sure. I see a Mark Williams plus mixed with JaVale McGee, whoever thinks he is. I think there is like some creation potential there. I haven't seen a lot of playmaking and passing, but just like with Carter Bryant, I'm going to extend Carter Bryant the same grace that I'm extending Kaman Malawach right now, which is I'm not expecting players who play for dominant Division One programs to go outside of their fucking scope. If your coach says you're a play finisher, you're a play finisher. Your coach says you're taking catch and shoot threes, and I don't want you taking anything from from above the break. You're not taking anything from above the break. So this is just a matter of doing your own work, understanding what was stopped, what was restricted. It's the same thing with Jacoby Walter last year, right? The the Baylor concept, the context with Jacoby had me believing on my board at least that Jacoby was a 17th player. But you watch his link tape, you watch a little bit more, and you dig more, you talk to his trainer, you understand the context that he was in, how he was asked to play, what his role was, what his role wasn't. And now you're like, maybe if I had known all of that, I might put him 13th. That's something that I strived to improve on this year, which is divorcing the production from the context. And again, the context would come on is you're not on a team where you're the star right now. You're 18 years old. You're super raw. You were at a refugee camp 4 years ago when they found you, developed you. You were at NBA Africa Academy. I don't know, and no disrespect to all the people that I know who've worked with NBA Africa Academy across the world. I've talked to a lot of them. Nothing but respect. This is not the greatest place to learn basketball, guys. Like if he had been somewhere at like Montverde, when he was 16, 17, he'd be further along right now. And again, you got to build up these grassroots programs some way. And sometimes that's going to mean that the potential of a player like Kaman Malawach might be suppressed a little bit. But now, if you're the Raptors, or the Nets, or the Utah Jazz, or whatever, you're going to bring that back up, right? I don't necessarily buy the guarding in space stuff. He doesn't seem to be necessarily as fluid as some people want him to be. Defensively, at least, guarding in space is going to be really difficult. But could there be like a Miles Turner with more size and more screening ability upside with him? I could certainly see it. So miss me with the Joel Embiid stuff. Maybe not necessarily Miles Turner in terms of the raw shot blocking numbers. Because again, when I compare his numbers to the true elite shot blockers at the collegiate level from Chet Holmgren, Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., those guys who really, really, really racked up the shot blocking. Uh, Rudy Gobert didn't play collegiate basketball, but you can consider guys like Walker Kessler at the collegiate level. His block numbers are nowhere close, but his rim deterrence is incredible. So that's something that I really like. I really like Kaman Malawach. I think if he's the pick at 9 for the Raptors, he'll be great with what the Raptors like to do. But he's not a playmaker right now, and that will be something to work on a lot. He might actually do some G League stints with the Raptors. So that's that. We got number 6, Trey Johnson. Okay. So this is where we get into the next tier of prospects, which is Trey Johnson, Con Knipple, and VJ Edgecombe, which I would consider incomplete wings with star upside. So the thing with Trey is I think he's the best shooter in this class. It's between him and Con Knipple. He's fantastic. Kobe Brea is up there, but just in terms of the number of ways that he can get his shots, man, he is special. He is more than a shooter, though. He is also a scorer. He is a guy who can get his shot off the dribble, couple pull-ups. He's not a great paint finisher, not the greatest defender, but he has decent defensive tools. And again, at 6'6" with a 6'11" wingspan, there is a lot to like there. He is also a very underrated passer. I do not like the Cam Thomas comparisons. Not Cam Thomas. He's nowhere near Cam Thomas. And honestly, he had no business averaging 19.9 points per game on 40% three-point shooting with the level of difficulty and how teams are able to gang up on him and, like really, really scheme for him. And the fact that he was still that good and that efficient it should be, credited. So I think that this is a player who has, type of Klay Thompson, Ray Allen type of upside as a shooter at the NBA level. Will it all translate? I don't know. Will he be the best player on a championship team? Probably not, but he could be the second or third best player on the championship team. And that's really what this zone is. It's the second or third best player on a championship team. Con Knipple. It's really splitting hairs between these 3 prospects. Depending on the day that you ask me, I could certainly see a world in which Con is really 4, VJ is 6, and Trey is 5. I could see a world in which Trey is 4. I could also see a world in which Trey is 7. This is a very fluid range in the draft, but I love Con Knipple. I really do. And y'all know this if you followed me in the draft. There's one type of prospect that I almost always overlook. It's the North American white wings. I'm burned, by the Nick Stauskises and the Corey Kesperts and the Adam Morrisons of the world. They never turn out to be as good as you think they're going to be. What makes Con different? Well, Con has game, man. He has game. Con would be invited to the cookout. His game is not standstill shooting. You'll notice I wasn't very high on Liam McNeely, right? The Trib saying respect Kispert. Kispert's good. He's all right. Yo, Christian Brown's dog. I like Christian Brown, but I didn't like him that much in the draft, to be honest. I like Peyton Watson more. So there you go. There's my bias. But I really like Con's game. I think, the time that Cooper spent out, we really got to see Con without Cooper. And I think that's what really elevated his draft stock from like top 14 to top 6. And I'd be very surprised if he lasts till 7. I'll be honest. He's a good passer. He has a very good balance and feel. He has a good way of taking contact. Seems very stoic in his demeanor. Seems like an incredibly hard worker. The jump shot is butter smooth. He'll be able to get it off the catch, but he can also probably do 2 dribble pull-ups. He is a good movement shooter, a true movement shooter who has excellent understanding of how to relocate, how to, come off of screens. I think with more talent, he is going to be even better. I think with more space at the NBA level, he's going to be even more unstoppable. What role does he play defensively? That is to be seen. Doesn't have the greatest wingspan. It's going to have to be hidden a little bit, but he's pesky. He tries. He tries really hard defensively. And that's really all I can ask. Obviously, if he was a great defender, he'd be the number 2 pick in this draft. With his shooting prowess, if he was a great defender, he'd be number 2 or number 3 in this draft. The fact that he's not a great defender and just a competent team defender who can just participate in a team scheme and not blow everything up by not trying and not reading and not getting back on defense, and the fact that he's sturdy and strong, that you're not going to be a completely, a post nightmare, in a mismatch, cross match on a big, and you're just not going to bump him around. The fact that he fights, the fact that he tries, the fact that he tries to sort of poke the ball away every now and again, the fact that he tries to put a hand up, that's enough for me, man. He's not going to be a negative defensively, but he's not going to be positive either. I'm quite certain of that. And then moving on to VJ Edgecombe, a guy that, again, like when I saw his Bahamas tape, I was pretty sure he might be the third best player in this draft. And then, the Baylor production was insane. For a player to go to Baylor and be this good as a freshman, I mean, that's really impressive. He is a crazy athlete. He guards well at the rim, which is something that I really like about Ochai Agbaji, but also something I really like about him. He is relentless. He is a total tryhard, which I really like in my top 5 picks. Like he is, one of those guys that you say jump, he says how high. Very coachable kid. He's going to be what he's going to be. Now, what he's going to be is probably, somewhere between a really, really, really high-end role player who can occasionally shoot like a 3-and-D wing with a little bit of size deficiency because he doesn't have that elite 7-foot wingspan that you want. But honestly, with his athleticism, if he had a true 7-foot wingspan and if he can create a little bit more off the dribble, he's a no-brainer number 2 pick in this draft. So again, nobody's perfect at this range. The only prospect that's even perfect, there's no perfect prospect in this draft. Even Cooper is not perfect. Cooper is the closest thing to perfect, and that's why he's greenlit. But everybody else has got holes. I think VJ's holes are easier to mask. I think he has a lot of potential as scaling up and down in roles. If the ball handling and creation and the playmaking ever comes around, this is a guy who could probably be a really good second option. Think Jalen Williams with a little less wingspan. Maybe the frequent comp is, Victor Oladipo. I'm not sure, but yeah, I guess I get it. It's kind of a 1-for-1 comparison of guys that you think to be a little bit undersized in that position. He doesn't play undersized though, and I do trust the shooting to come around. Like he doesn't shoot poorly. Like he's not a bad shooter. He's just not a great shooter. And yeah, when you combine it with his athleticism, his transition play, his ability to cut, his overall level of production at a very difficult program to put up that type of production and efficiency, I think he's a pretty no-brainer top 7 pick in this draft. Moving on to number 3, Carter Bryant. Carter is awesome. There's nothing I can say at this point that I haven't already said about this guy. I've been talking about him for 2.5 months. I'm the highest in the world. And if someone ever puts him at 3, I'm gonna say fuck you and move him to 2. I will remain the highest, remain his biggest fan in this draft. And if he ends up being a bust, I'll eat humble pie. I don't think he's going to be a bust. I also don't necessarily think he's going to be the number 9 pick tonight. But whatever goes for Carter, he's going to be a productive player. There's a really good chance he ends up being a role player. There's a really good chance if the on-ball creation and the playmaking and all that stuff doesn't come around, if the handle just never quite gets there, if the offensive production and volume never quite get there, if the shot doesn't translate, yeah, he's just going to be, Trevor Ariza, like a better version of Trevor Ariza, maybe in the worst case, like a Devin George, Trevor Ariza type of player. Like that's a really, really bad outcome for a player like that. So, with Carter, it's really difficult to say because he didn't show you that he's a 15, 18 point per game scorer at the collegiate level. He didn't come out and, take 15 shots a game. He didn't come out and handle a ton of possessions. He hasn't had the on-ball reps that anyone in the first round for me. There's no player on the screen right now, top 20, top 21, who had a lower usage, lower role, lower minutes and stuff than him, right? I mean, the only player you can even look at is Kaman Malawach, who averaged like 8 points per game in like, I think 20 minutes. But Kaman's context was different. He's raw. He's in Carter, and he's 18. Carter is not 18. Carter will be 20 in November. So I'm really betting on the fact that he lost years with his tibia fracture and his growth plate fracture in high school, that he lost some years of development there. I'm trusting very much in his recovery, and I'm also trusting a lot in his grit. A lot of his, I don't think since Scotty. Okay, so I'm gonna take you back to 2021, right? I'm watching the NBA draft with my girlfriend. I've already done a ton of podcasts hyping up Scotty Barnes. I didn't have PENSARE Basketball at the time, but I was on To The Point, Facebook, whatever, Basketball Zone. I was doing my rounds, and I was talking about Scotty Barnes. Love Scotty Barnes. Think Scotty Barnes is great. And I take you back to 2021. Draft night comes along. Again, no PENSARE Basketball, so I'm glued to the TV screen like all of y'all are right now. And I'm watching this and I see, pick number one, Cade Cunningham, no surprise. Jalen Green, no surprise. Evan Mobley, no surprise. And then pick four comes, and I get a message from a friend of mine who would, typically know about this stuff. He's pretty plugged in with the league. He does some reporting, and God, I'm trying to. Sometimes I have to stop myself from actually saying the name or the outlet, so I don't want to expose anybody. But yes, like he would know if there's anybody that I trust in my life that would 100% know, like this is what's happening through Scotty's agency. He also has like some connections with Scotty's agency. So also like he's just like the Raptors are going with Suggs, and that's again my biggest fear that night was that the Raptors would pick Suggs or Jonathan Kuminga, and I was just devastated. I left the room. At the time, I was still a smoker, and I was just like, I looked at a pack of cigarettes. There was like 18 left, and I'm like, I think we're smoking all 18 of these in the next hour. I was so upset, bro. Like 2 minutes felt like 3 hours as I contemplated, like, oh man, I'm gonna have to watch this guy like morph into an all-star in Orlando. I'm gonna be so pissed off. And he texted me back this emoji laughing, and he said, just kidding. And I rushed in, and my girlfriend's looking at the screen, and I hear it. Adam Silver comes on, and he says, with the fourth pick in the NBA draft, the Toronto Raptors select Scotty Barnes. And you see him like get up, and he's dancing, and he's shaking hands, and his dad is up in the crowd, and you don't see him on TV, and his aunt is up there, and his mom is super excited, and Jason is super excited. I'm sure Brian's super excited somewhere where he's at. And I just felt like I could have fallen down to the floor, man. It was the happiest I think I'd been since the championship. I felt like we just won another championship. That's how excited I was the Raptors drafted Scotty Barnes. So if you ever understand like my fandom for this guy, that's not where it started. It started in like 2017, 2018. Watched him for a long time. And I don't think I ever forgave that friend, for like a good month, but I appreciated him for doing that because it showed me like this may be OD for y'all, but it kind of gave me a perspective on how much I actually wanted it to happen, because for 3 minutes, like all day, I was like, Scotty's the pick, Scotty's the pick. All these idiots in Toronto are going to be like fucking laughing. Michael Grange is going to be wrong. Doug Smith's going to be wrong. And when you start thinking that everybody's wrong and you're right, there's a part of your brain that creeps in like, you egomaniac, like you're not going to be right when Michael Grange is going to be wrong. And so when he sent that text, I was like, fuck, I can't believe I was wrong. I'm going to have to eat so much crow. But then also like the negative side as a Raptor fan is I got to go watch my favorite prospect in this draft go and be an all-star for somebody else. I was so pissed off. And then when the Raptors picked him, I was like, trust in Masai. So tonight I'm going to have a very similar reaction with Carter. It's actually ditto. Like the faith I had in Scotty is probably greater than the faith I have in Carter, because I think I have fewer questions about Scotty's game. And there was no way in the world you were ever going to convince me that Scotty Barnes is going to be a role player. And there's a world in which Carter Bryant is a role player. So I understand it's not a tit for tat, but trust me, in terms of like the personality profile, the interviews, and all the shit that I've heard about him and all the digging that I've done into him, this guy's not going to fail in the NBA level. He's going to be good wherever he goes. I'm going to root for him, be happy for him. Definitely think that we have a lot of Carter heads and Carter FC in the house tonight. Every poll we've run on Instagram, Twitter, whatever, I ask y'all who you want. Y'all say Carter. I have a feeling that has a lot to do with me just hyping him up as much as I have. I'll be very excited to see what he does. It might not be right away. You might have to wait a few years like we did with Dyson Daniels, but I am positive that one day, very soon, that Carter Bryant is the type of person that is going to pop off and people are going to notice. And, again, my victory laps might have to wait until 2028 for this, but Young Lightskin said, I was the biggest Carter fan before I even found this channel. Not going to lie. That's great, man. Rob's Raptor Insider is Doug Smith. No, it's not. I promise you it's not. But yeah, and I mean, like this channel is slowly rehabbing. It's let's call it image. We're not all the way gonna rehab our image. There's always gonna be some people who are never, ever gonna be okay with how I handled the Fred situation, and maybe they're just always going to say like, this is the altar of Scotty, this guy's delusional. And even right now I'm seeing comments, Rob, it's not cool to just get so fixated on Carter that everything else is a disappointment. But how would you feel if this was your board, right? If your board was number 3 Carter and he's there at number 9, yeah, of course you'd be fucking disappointed to pick the 8th guy, 9th guy, 10th guy, or 11th guy. It doesn't mean those players aren't good. It doesn't mean the Raptors haven't done the intel. And honestly, Carter's situation is going to depend a lot on context. If he ends up in a bad situation, again, like it gets murkier. So in a lot of ways, I want the situation for Carter as well because I really see a chance for him to start like by year 2 with the Raptors. So that's all good, man. But yes, as I said, as the channel's image rehabs a little bit, I'm sure we'll start to get a little bit more, let's call it NBA people on here, not necessarily players, because that's never really been my deep interest to interview players, but insiders, scouts, other media members, etc. We'll definitely do that. Okay, hang on one second. Yeah, we got 2 more hours. We got to talk about the number 2 pick, and that is Dylan Harper. You know, there were times this year where Dylan was not a lock for number 2, and it seems like the more we've gone through this draft cycle, and as we narrow down to the final hours, it's a foregone conclusion that Dylan Harper is definitely the number 2 pick. There was a time when Jaeger Demon was predicted to be the number 2 pick. There was a time when VJ Edgecombe was predicted to be the number 2 pick. There was also a time that Ace Bailey was projected to be number 2 pick. Dylan Harper has not been the lock that some people think he is, and that is because he is not the greatest shooter from the outside. He does not have a projectable mid-range game, so he's not a perfect prospect. When he takes it off the dribble, his shot is a little bit low. He's a little bit Emmanuel quickly in that sense that this is never going to be. It's not Cade. He's not Cade. I just want to be clear about that. I know I've caught a lot of strays for being a big Cade hater. I'm not a Cade hater. Just so y'all know, I was very high on Cade at the draft. When I did if y'all go back to the point and you watch like what is the Raptors board, Cade was number 1, Evan Mobley was number 2, Scotty Barnes was number 3. I respect Cade, absolutely. Rob low-key, the Andrew Tate of Raptors FC. What the fuck does that mean? I haven't watched a single Andrew Tate thing. I know he has a terrible reputation. Is that what you're alluding to? That I have a terrible reputation? Or are you alluding to the fact that I tell you to keep it straight? Or I really don't know, man. I really don't. 5 likes to go. What are we doing here? You're trying to get up to 100 likes? That's cool. Thank you. Appreciate it, man. The Andrew Tate of Toronto FC sounds like an insult. We used to it, man. It's cool. It's cool. Nah, because you're balding. I'm not balding. How am I balding? Because I wear a hat? I'm not bald, dude. I wear the hat to preserve my anonymity to some extent. Do I need to start doing these fucking episodes without my cap? I guess that's weird to me. But anyways, whatever. He is a troll. Ignore. Well, I don't think Arham is a troll. Okay. Did you see the white proposal? Yeah, I did. I mean, it's a rumor, and it is by Brett Siegel. And shout outs to Clutch Points. I almost worked with them at one point. That would have been very interesting. I don't think Brett is reporting from the Raptors side of things. So, yeah. Hey, what's good, Draft Stack? What's good, man? Happy NBA Draft Day. Indeed. Indeed. Y'all know Draft Stack. We've had Nick on many times. Penn Carter can still get drafted by the Raptors without working out for them. Happened with Jacoby last year. I brought this up yesterday. Senior citizen support. Penn, what do you think about my profile pic? I think you're trying to troll Chilltown Hoops, but you come to the wrong place, my guy, because I'm a Chill supporter. I'm a diet Chill supporter. Chill is like the GOAT, and you're not going to. If that's an insult to Chill, I can't really read the shirt, but I'm assuming that senior citizen support, you're not a Chill fan, is what I'm saying. If you are a Chill fan, W, right? Yeah. Okay. So Anyway, we are going to be doing the draft live. Draft Stack saying came here to just came here to steal some of your viewers. Well, you know the cool thing about me is that I'm not a zero sum thinker. So, how about this? I'll plug your show. Nick and the Draft Stack team are doing a NBA draft live at the same time that we're going to be doing an NBA draft live. So if you want to go check them out, definitely go be my guest. This is not a competition. If there's somebody who would rather hear from Nick, Nick Thomas, y'all heard him, Aussie guy, came on, very bright, very opinionated, very original. If y'all want to listen to him instead of myself and Ersin, this is a free country. YouTube is a big platform. There's plenty of views for everybody. I hope you do well. Dog, no, I don't want you to lose any videos. Viewers. I was trolling. It's okay. We are probably going to have like 1,000 viewers. So, you know, if you guys need some viewers, we'll happily send some your way. No problem. Okay. Gotta love draft day. Can't wait for all the chaos. Absolutely. This is going to be nuts, man. I'm nervous. Okay. Cooper Flagg, number one. We got to do this real quick. We're an hour and 10 minutes and we rambled about Carter. We rambled about my Scotty memory. Okay. Cooper Flagg is the best player in this draft class. He's not going to be the best player in this draft class. He is the best player in this draft class. His intensity with which he approaches his work, his humility, his fluidity, his tangible upside is immense. All NBA, I won't say lock, but the last time I was this sure that a prospect was going to be really freaking good was Victor Wembanyama. He is awesome. I'm higher on him than I was on Paolo, Jabari, Chet, a lot of guys. It is insanely difficult to be this good, this young, this early, and he's been good for a long time. This is a kid who has no red flags, none. You can talk about the shooting. I thought it got better. You can talk about the handle because the low lights, I think it got better. You can talk about, you know, is he going to be that high level impact shot creator? I don't know, man. He's 18 years old. He went up against much older players at the collegiate level, and I thought he was very good. I thought he was incredible this year. I mean, honestly, this is truly spooky shit that he did. He was younger than Zion. He was younger than Chet. He was younger than a lot of those guys that put up those gaudy box plus minus numbers at the collegiate level. He's younger than Michael Beasley. I think he's going to get better. And I think he's going to a really good situation for himself. I know the Dallas Mavericks have caught a lot of strays for their trading and handling of Luka Doncic, but man, you know, you can speak conspiracy into existence or you can say this is an affirmation come true because they said defense wins championships. Nico Harrison confidently traded a pylon of a defender who often doesn't care about defense in Luka Doncic, who is a very talented player. And they shouldn't have traded him because they didn't get enough from whatever, but they traded him for a defender. They traded him for multiple defenders in Max Christie and, of course, Anthony Davis. And now you get to pair Cooper Flagg, who, I'm going to be honest, it's difficult to see a world in which he's a better player than Luka, but he will be a winning. He will never be a defensive liability. In no world is Cooper going to be a defensive liability. The only thing to settle right now is whether he's going to be the second best player on a championship team or he's going to be the best player on a championship team. That's where we're at. There was no debate with Luka. He's only going to be the best player on a championship team. He can't be the second best player on a championship team. I think his game is a lot more portable than people give it credit for. I think he has a lot of Scotty Barnes in him, which is interesting, right? He is a better prospect than Scotty, younger, better than Scotty at the same age. He would definitely go ahead of Scotty and frankly any prospect that I've liked over the last couple of years other than Wemby in a draft. I think he would go ahead of Paulo, ahead of Chet. I think he'd go ahead of a lot of those guys. The marketability is insane. Insane. Like he is really like there's not enough nice things that I could say about Cooper Flagg, but I think the comparisons to Andre Karolinko really downplay his offensive upside, and I think his offensive upside could be immense. I see a lot of Jason Tatum and Kawhi Leonard in his game. I also see a lot of Kevin Garnett in his game. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was the first person that I remember comparing him to those players, those specific set of players, and those are the players that I would like to compare him to. And yes, I just compared him to 3 black guys. Sorry, there haven't been any white guys who play like Cooper Flagg. So that's just where I'm at. Rob, if we get ace, you're going to lose your mind. The same team that should be interested in Carter is the same team that should be interested in Ace Bailey. If we're just talking player types, if we're just talking skill sets, we're just talking multi-positional defenders at the wing who can shoot threes. Yeah, like with questionable but potential upside as playmakers. Yeah, the difference is completely just a totally different approach to work, a totally different approach to who you are. In fact, I'll share the funniest thing about Carter before we get out of here and before I prepare myself for disappointment, which is that Carter was having a conversation today with Brian Scalabrine, and they said, "Well, where did the Tamani Kamara stuff come in?" And he said, "It's actually from your quote." And he was telling Brian Scalabrine, because Brian Scalabrine, as you remember, faced off against a whole bunch of NPCs, and he was beating the shit out of them. And a lot of people troll Brian Scalabrine for not being this great player or whatever, being like the 12th, 13th guy on a good team. And he said famously at this point, he said, "I'm closer to LeBron James than you are to me." And Carter said that quote was a really motivating factor for him because he had to learn a different way to be successful. And so his mom 2 years ago got him league pass, and he fell in love with Tamani Kamara, which is interesting. So yeah, like man, I haven't dug this deeply into a prospect in terms of the background stuff, personal stuff, coaches, and all that stuff since Scotty. The Scotty stuff came out very, very clean. Like in terms of the off court stuff, talking to people who had coached him, talking to people who'd played with him, it all came back as this is an energy giver. He's the best teammate. He lights up every room. He makes your practices more intense. He's an ultimate competitor. These are the things I value. He's really coachable. He's always trying to learn. He's always trying to work. Scotty Barnes was in the gym the day he got drafted. Carter Bryant, or the morning after he got drafted, Scotty was in the gym. I think the morning of his draft, he was in the gym. I think Brian can correct me if I'm wrong on that one. Carter was in the gym shooting jumpers at 7 a.m. this morning. This is not the type of work ethic that you really want to bet against, in my opinion. But if the Raptors do decide to bet against it, I hope they've crossed their T's, crossed their T's and dotted their I's, and they pick someone great, hopefully. If it's not Carter today, and it probably won't be, I'm setting myself up for that, by the way. I hope it's someone good. I hope it's someone good. And if the Raptors do decide to trade this pick and it's Derek White, I'll support it, because you know what? If it's Cam Johnson, I'll support it, because I can't really do anything else at this point but support it. I can't change it, so I got to support it. But I will be critical of it. I'll evaluate it as fairly as possible. Ersin will be here. Ersin will be here. Between myself and Ersin, we got you covered for the entire draft. We can give you deep analysis. We're going to give you the stats. We're going to have everything pulled up. We're going to have our screens all ready to break this down. And we're going to make sure that if you attend our draft show, that you're going to get the most informed, most balanced, and hopefully most level-headed perspective on these players. Can't wait to see y'all at 6:45. Fuck, I only got 25 minutes. We're gonna push that draft. We're gonna push that draft show to 7. Ersin will be on the draft show he will be there at 7:20-ish. So yes, that show is coming up very, very soon for you guys. Bring your popcorn, bring yourselves. It's gonna be a grand time. Make sure to hit like on the way out. Appreciate y'all for tuning in. Thank you.